Namaskar. Hello and welcome to PGurus channel. I'm your host 𝙒𝙖𝙩𝙤. We have with us Kushal Kelkar back, and we're going to talk about a very interesting topic. Many of the American-born Hindu American children are facing in their lives as they grow up in America. There are two different cultures. Clearly, there are sharp differences, how they navigate this, what kind of questions they have, all this stuff and more. So, without further ado, let's welcome our guest of the afternoon, Kushal Kelkar. Kushal, namaskar and welcome to PGurus channel.
Namaskar. Thank you.
How are you?
Good. How are you doing today?
I'm doing well, Kushal. So, the identity crisis that happens. By the way, Kushal, I have to tell you one admission. My parents, their generation was among like a buffeted generation in the sense they grew up when India became independent, from British to India's independence. And the governance was different. India was independent, but India wasn't quite free of the thought process, what you are, and so on. So, whatever things that you are seeing here was something that was felt even by my parent generation. However, the thing kind of morphed from there to us, who, we were one of the first ones to leave India and settle abroad. If you look at 67, I think was the year when US started admitting people. And I think in the mid 60s, United Kingdom also started admitting people from India. So that's when the exodus started. All the professionals started coming. And for us, setting up, putting down roots in a new country was the first thing that came to our mind. And somewhere along the way, we forgot to let our children grow the way we did. We had, my parents never told who to go play with, and they never took me anywhere. I was loose. Once I came home from school, I went out and played whatever sport it was, got bashed up, did that, came home around 6:30 in evening and studied. Life was a little bit different. Whereas now, when your generation grew up here, I say this thing, I think I speak for most of my generation. We have your future planned out from your third grade onwards. We have decided which schools you will go to, and then you work backwards from there and say you do this, this sport, this hobby, this, and so on and so forth. You have no time to even think about anything because we are starting really, really young. But having said all that stuff, did we do something wrong? I would say yes, but then it's already done, and now here you are. Kushal, walk us through how you feel growing up here. I think that would be a good way to start this conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. So as I was saying in the last episode, right, when we last spoke, growing up here was interesting because it was starkly, different than kind of how Indians can grow up in India sometimes. They have a little bit more, freedom. They're kind of allowed to, experiment a little bit more in terms of the world around them, right? But over here, this is a new country for Indians. And so Indian parents, have that thing about how do I raise an Indian child in a non-Indian country? So they're kind of going through their own experience of what it means to be Indian. And they've never had to think of that before they left India, because it's homogenized over there in terms of at least everything has a common, Indian culture and a Hindu identity, especially amongst Hindus, right? So, but coming here, they're kind of going through their own, challenge and struggle about how to raise a child in this country. So they're kind of figuring things out. And so for me, growing up here, it was interesting because there was this conflict of cultures, right? So there's a world outside the house, and then there's a world inside the house, and so yeah, for me, it was like this identity crisis almost that I went through, right? So I didn't know if I belonged to the world outside or the world inside. And what was the world inside? Was that a world I can vibrate with, I can resonate with? Could I relate to that world? Was that me? Or was it my parents' world? So this is the fundamental question that formed the basis of my own identity crisis while I was growing up.
I have to tell you one story. I came to this country in the 80s, and I was studying in Colorado, and there weren't many vegetarian choices. So we made up our own vegetarian dishes. One thing we used to do was go to McDonald's and order a hamburger without ham. The guy would take the order, and then the short order cook will ask, hamburger without ham? That's what he wants. Same expression again and again. I mean, maybe in 90s it improved a little bit, but this is the kind of food choices we had when we were, finding our feet in this country as a student. And then, of course, I was lucky. I moved to the Bay Area, and the choices just opened up dramatically. A lot more things to do here, a lot more food choices. Even in the 90s, there were a lot more food choices. That's just one part of it, though, right? But we did our best to help them assimilate. Whether we did a good job or not, I don't know. I have to ask my kids about this. But more importantly, did you have these kind of funny moments when you were growing up?
Yeah, I mean, there's so many, there's countless, right? So people will make fun of you for like the smallest things that, that they don't understand, right? That you might think is amazing, it's cool, it's okay. But for them, they don't like that. And so when kids are growing up, they want to fit in with their friends, right? They want social acceptance. And that is where it kind of gets a little challenging. And so it's like, do I throw, my culture, my identity, who I am away, for my friends? And kids don't think that deeply, right? And we all feel hurt, right? We feel hurt when somebody's kind of making poking fun of us, and so we start immediately questioning ourselves, like, well, am I really weird? Am I doing something wrong? And so kind of thinking along those lines. But no, I had very funny examples while growing up. I mean, sometimes if it was a festival, if I wore like a if I wore my chandan or tika or something like that, I would definitely get called out on that. Like, oh, look, and then there's this, like racial slurs, right? Like dot head or something like that, right? And then, so like you're kind of struggling with that, right? But eventually I was like, you know what? This is who I am. And I think the more I became comfortable with it, the more that they kind of grew into that, right? They're like, okay, this is what he does, this is who he is. And I think the key was to kind of just be proud of who I was, right? So it took a few years for me to realize that. So yeah, that's one very memorable example I can give you is it's cultural symbols like that, the ones that you wear. Sometimes if it's a festival, I would wear maybe some colorful clothing, right? And so then it was like, okay, well, why are you wearing all this stuff? Are you weird? Or and the kind of question your sexual orientation or something like that, right? And so just to make you feel a certain way. But I think the key was you being comfortable in that. And so that's part of the whole process of being comfortable with who you are.
I had a friend, both our kids used to learn swimming at the YMCA, and the Santa Clara YMCA in the Bay Area is very famous because the Santa Clara University has a professional Olympic training team. Meaning, like, if you get serious, I mean, if you want to be really like to swim or do any aquatics at the level of Olympics, this is the place to go. They had some very serious, dedicated stuff. And this was right by the side of it. So many instructors who came here were fairly well qualified, and they could spot talent, like at the 5-year-old, 8-year-old, oh, this kid can swim, this kid can do backflips. They teach you also, all the different types of swimming, butterfly, breaststroke, and so on and so forth. So one of the dads that I used to, it was like a regular thing. Every Saturday, rain or shine, we were there. The kids will be swimming, and we'll be just sitting and talking. And he used to ask me, why do Indians wear bright colored clothing? And the first thing that came to my mind was, I said, listen, back home, things become dull in a very short amount of time because of the heat and dust around. The sun beats down on the clothes. So what happens is within a year, the color goes off. So if you start out with a dull cloth, then it's it looks shabby, which is why they tend to have more bright clothes, and they also change their clothes a lot faster than we do here. So I mean, this is something that I made it up because I mean, it's not like I had researched the answer for that, but that's the first thing that came to my mind, because I know growing up we used to have these faded clothes, where the sun doesn't fall much. The inside of the collar will have the true color of the shirt, and so on and so forth.
Yeah, so
But
yeah, it's important. It's important to wear those.
yes. The biggest differences I saw fitting in was when they were playing sports. My children played sports, very competitive, very high level of competition. That's where you strike some best friendships also,
You do, yeah. You make a lot of
right?
friends through sports, and you get to know a lot of people. And I think it plays a big role in kind of being comfortable with who you are, and
Yes,
you kind of
yes.
start coming out of your shell. And that's a way to kind of start becoming more comfortable with more people.
Right, right, right. So all these things put together, this is what you face. I mean, we didn't face all these things. We were in
Yeah,
a homogeneous society. We didn't have
yeah.
all these problems. And despite all that, you guys have found your own way, your position, and the way you're comfortable with the way you are doing things. Um, if you were to give advice, I mean, your meditation training teaching is again actually one way of trying to solve the same problem. Probably 80 questions out of 100 you'll say, meditate or think about this way to, you'll get clarity. But if some of your friends come and ask you, I have this problem because I'm this, how would you answer that?
I would say, are you talking about like identity crisis, right?
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
yeah,
Identity crisis is one of them. I'll give you an example. So,
yeah,
Kushal, this will make it easier. On Diwali day in Silicon Valley, almost all Indian Americans will wear traditional dress. One day in the year, they will wear traditional dress. It's an accepted thing. That's because so many people in the workforce here, they're comfortable with Indian culture. They know Indian. Plus, Bollywood has played a huge role in assimilating Indian values and ideas into the society.
that's
I
true.
mean, this is a feel-good movie. The actor and the actress go to Switzerland, all the places that we perhaps Americans also go to. So there is a certain amount of feel-good, sugar, short movies that has played its own part. But beyond that, everybody wears the same kind of dress on all other days. But it is at least accepted and it's welcome. There are also, big companies have Indian food as an option, and when you go to their cafeteria, there's always Indian food available, two or three choices. This is every day. You can go eat that. So at least in some areas of the United States, it is well acknowledged, and assimilation is a lot easier. How is it? I don't know where you are in the East Coast, right? How is it in your place?
Yeah, and, I mean, in my place, it was very interesting. So, first of all, the climate, very, very hot, humid, right? And so, didn't really feel like wearing a lot of the bright, colorful clothing and just kind of represent. It was more of just kind of wear anything. But I will say, Florida has a very colorful culture, right? And so we have Miami nearby, so it's just that that colorful atmosphere. In fact, the people that I kind of grew up with were not just the regular Americans, but it was more of a blend. It was a mix of people, so that kind of helped. And so when I saw other people kind of embracing their culture, their identity, their communities, I felt like doing the same thing too. So it was very interesting. It was sort of like this mutual upliftment, right? And this mutual celebrations, encouragement of celebrating one's culture. So I would definitely wear, all the bright, colorful clothing. I would try to be more representative about who I am. But this kind of came later. At first, it was not like that, right? So at first, it was more like wanting to get that social acceptance, wanting to fit in, wanting to discover, who how I'm viewed from another person's lens. When I kind of stopped caring so much about what others think and who I really am, what mattered to me. I think that's when I was more comfortable in kind of rediscovering and asking these questions about who I am, what it means to be Indian. And again, like we're talking about it from a very philosophical point of view, but kids growing up, I think this is very natural and smooth for them. The more comfortable that they are with themselves, the more comfortable others will be around them. And because the way you carry yourself, others will look at you in that sense. Others will always try to make you become more like them, but the question is, will you become more like who you truly are, and so that others will kind of accept you. So growing up in Florida was very interesting. Different cultures, a lot of color, but still a lot of identity crisis, because I didn't have too many Indians where I grew up. And so that made it a little bit tougher for me but also more beautiful when I finally did accept who I was. So my advice to young, Hindu Americans is be proud of who you are, understand, and that we all come from different cultures and backgrounds. Even the local people here, they're very proud of who they are, right? They're proud of who they are, and that's who they are. But I think they're not the only ones. Like, the white community is proud of who they are, the Black community is proud of who they are. They have some sort of cultural ties with their roots, where they came from. They discover, and so the Spanish people, the Hispanics, right? So just like that, you have a unique identity, and we are all here to represent who we are, because the more true we are to our roots, the better we are going to be able to be appreciated by others, And so I think it's all a matter of just being really comfortable in who you are. The more comfortable you are, the more others will be comfortable with you.
Yes, and that's very good advice. And see, America is actually a country created out of diversity. Once you understand that, a lot of things become simple. What you
Yeah.
see today as a way of life is not something that's been like that for, before. It's been changing. It keeps changing. And
We're melting, we're like homogenizing almost, but still, people have ties. But we need to understand that we're all not meant to be homogenized, right? Because then
yes,
what
yes.
makes us unique? What makes us Indian, right? What does it mean to be so?
Right, right, right. And understanding that is a very important point. But once you understand and you're comfortable with yourself, you can do whatever you want, wear whatever you want, eat whatever you want. You will be accepted for who you are. That is
Yeah.
the most important thing. Thank you so much, Kushal. And viewers, please like, share, and subscribe to our channel. I want young leaders, thought leaders like Kushal Kelkar to find their own feet. And if you could please pass on this video to your child, if you happen to be a parent, if you're a grandpa, please send it to your grandchildren. And I want everybody to understand, because this is something that each and every one of your child or grandchild perhaps experiences in a small level or more. So please help them get ready for what is an experience outside. We are just, of course, talking about US. Each country has slightly different way of looking at culture. Some may be more stronger, some may be a little weaker. But whatever it is, you need to understand that no matter what you try, you cannot take the Indianness, the Hinduness out of you. So it's better to embrace it. Thank you very much, Kushal.
Thank you so much.